here's what I know. Someone's going to have to start to fight for Nebraska. All right, so I'm here to fight for Nebraska. And finally, the team grows up. It's what people always ask me about year 3. Finally, the team grows up, and they're like, well, I got to go make the play.
It's time to join the Husker Huddle with Nick Handley and Grant Hansen.
Indeed, it is that time again, the Husker Huddle podcast with Grant Hansen. I'm Nick Handley. Appreciate everyone tuning in. We're wrapping up fall camp. Fall camp is done.
What a great episode last week. I thank all of you for your support. It was our most viewed episode, your interactions either in the mailbag or in the comments section. So thank you for doing that. Please like our content. Please like this content. Subscribe to the Performance Podcast YouTube page. Give us a review on Spotify and Apple, among other things. We appreciate your feedback, and we're excited to give it another go here.
You don't want to get to that one comment there?
Oh, yeah. Well, no. Some of you can chime in, like Grin ERZ last week, who says YouTube Music has over 800,000 regular users, predicted to be 1 billion by 2026. These are great facts.
Yes, they are.
You don't find these anywhere else.
Nope.
These two, iSheep, meaning us, think Apple Music and Spotify are the only valid platforms while posting on YouTube. We do not believe that.
I have an Android, by the way.
And
I have a Galaxy.
He's an Android user.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are not devoted to the iPhone specifically. This is not. We're neutral there, but your reviews, your interactions on Spotify and Apple, those help. If you're not watching here on YouTube, you can find us there. You can listen there on your way down to Kansas City next week when our episode comes out at 10 a.m. on Thursday. We're moving up a day with the game being earlier.
I love the iSheep label. It's one that I might get a jersey or something and just put iSheep on the back. I don't know. It was pretty good. So thank you for that. But as Grant said, appreciate this. It's been a lot of fun. And we're just getting started because when we come at you, as Grant said, next week, we're going to have that pre-game feel to it. We're going to really get into not only what we feel about how that game is going to break down. We'll have, of course, as you expect here on the Husker Huddle podcast, we'll have player interviews. We'll have our sound, everything. And it's here. So this is exciting. So we're not going to waste any time because we are jammed today on the show. We're going to be talking to Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7 Sports. Also had a really good conversation with Justin Evans. Big piece of that offensive line and taking that major step forward with the other additions that they had, but him also moving over to center. You'll have that conversation as well. And of course, our mailbag, everything is coming your way. So let's waste no time. Here is our weekly sound.
Oh man, iron sharpens iron, right? You got Cam. Cam is, if he see me down, he picks me up. And that's what it's all about, I was talking about energy vampires in the room, and Coach Rude does a phenomenal job bringing people in. He brought John Gordon in. 5 years ago, Coach Reed bought the whole staff the Energy Bus book. And I'm talking about energy vampire, and he shows up. So these guys in the room, from Cam, from Pop, even if I walk down a slab bit into energy down, Coach, what's wrong? You all right? And that's what it's all about, because we all in this together. It's about us. Us.
We're going to play as aggressive as the officials allow us to play. Honestly, I learned that a couple years ago from Dave Merritt. Not from him personally, but Dawson's son Dave is the DB coach for the Chiefs, and I watched how they played our receivers in Buffalo, and they played them very aggressively, and obviously in the playoffs, they let you play. So that was about 5 or 6 years ago. And since then, I've always believed in playing them aggressively, but I think you got to play to the standard of what the officiating is allowing.
Heinrich, from spring to now, is a total different tight end. I'm really proud of the steps that he's taken from the spring to the summer camp, from week 1 to week 2, from week 2 to week 3. He's working at it. He's getting more comfortable playing the physical nature of the position, and look forward to seeing what he does this season moving forward, because he's just going to keep getting better and better. He's got a lot of upside,
and he's developed every aspect of his game. Started with just seeing reads. It started with pass protection. Now it's, as he's accomplished all of the things of the running back position, now he's really at the last stage and really focused on his body. Really focused last offseason. Really started to really put the hammer on him as far as getting his weight right, and now he's carrying 205, 203 consistently, and he can tell the difference. We can tell the difference. He's running behind his pads. He's getting physical when he needs to get physical. Everybody knows he can he can move laterally, but now he's starting to understand the difference between 205 and 193.
You trying to get me in trouble? But I'm gonna say it. I'm a Gates man. No sauce, all barbecue. And I hope y'all try some Gates if y'all come there. I appreciate y'all time. Thank y'all so much.
No sauce, all barbecue.
Ah, yes.
That is fantastic. Terry Braden was just, he's a shot of energy. We talk about Mike Eckler having that just overall optimism, excitement. It's very contagious. But don't sleep on Terry Braden when it comes to what he brings energy-wise. My goodness. That was great.
Yes. Hey, by the way, this is kind of a side note. We'll get back into the reaction here in a second. But I wanted to forgot at the top. Husker Huddle at myboomerradio.com. If you want to be in part of next week's mailbag, that's where you go. Husker Huddle at myboomerradio.com. Email us your questions and get them in early because we have that earlier deal next week with the game being on Thursday.
Yeah.
So, but on your point on Terry Braden, you can just feel it, right? And that's why I chose the soundbite about him talking about energy vampires because he is not that. And so you can just feel it, all of that, and his passion for his room. And so I think, Terrence Knighton was well loved.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
the death row moniker for the defensive line, all those great things.
With good reason. I think Terry Braden, if his unit is as successful as Knighton's was and can be, and he can coach them up in the same way, I think he will be just as appreciated by the Huskers fan base.
And he talked about it, and we've heard from a couple of defensive linemen in this whole process of they understand what people are assuming with the defensive line with losing guys like Nash Hutmacher and Ty Robinson. But they are just so damn poised to create that narrative. And I think the reason I bring that up is because Terry Braden's one of those guys that I think is going to really nurture that type of narrative with those guys. And so it's interesting to see all of what guys like Riley Van Poppel have talked about, guys like Keona Davis have talked about, all of the different defensive linemen that we've had a chance to talk to, hearing Cam Lenhart talk. They all have that very consistent message that they're really excited to show people that they can also be effective against the run. They can hold up in Big Ten play. They can hold that standard that was created in even year one of Matt Rule here. And the good news is a lot of those guys that are in key roles were here year one under Matt Rule. They have gone through the teaching of Terrence Knighton and now are going through Terry Braden. So that NFL background as well with Terry Braden I thought was great. Another part of the sound that I couldn't help but to gravitate to was Marcus Satterfield talking about Heinrich Haarberg, because I still think there is, now I'm not saying he's going to be the most elusive, biggest playmaking tight end in the Big Ten.
For sure.
But I think that athleticism and his ability to process things quickly, be able to make that adjustment. I think this is going to be something with Heinrich Haarberg that is going to suit this offense well, but also suit Heinrich Haarberg very well if there is some type of avenue to play professional football.
There's a couple of different moving parts I thought with Satterfield's comments earlier this week. To me, the thing that maybe could be a cause for concern is the lack of physicality from a tight end version of that physicality or experience with those type of reps for Heinrich Haarberg, for one. But the same is true for Carter Nelson, who is an incredible route runner. We know how he can stretch the field. His athleticism is off the charts, but Marcus Satterfield made note of that. He's probably had maybe less than 50 double teams in his entire life. So from that side of things, that could be a cause for concern. One of the longer bites, though, that we had was that we cut for time for Satterfield was talking about the diversity or the diversity of skill, rather, in that tight end room. And so you have a guy, Luke Lindenmeyer, who is, I think, just from all the comments that we've heard, very, very prepared to just be that tight end one for you. Now, a lot of times, though, you see a lot of teams that are running 12 personnel at this point in time with multiple tight ends. So as concerned as I could be, maybe with the physicality or at least the experience with the physical part of the tight end role for Heinrich Haarberg and Carter Nelson, I think you can feel confident in and safe with Luke Lindenmeyer as your tight end one.
Yeah, and we saw just the quick impact of Dana Holgerson being able to use Luke Lindemeyer at the end of last year too.
Last bit here though, E.J. Barthel.
Yeah, and E.J. Barthel talking about Emmett Johnson, and the thing that I feel is important out of that soundbite when you talk about the weight that he's put on, the good muscle mass that he's put on.
It's cut weight.
Yeah, and anybody who's seen Emmett Johnson in the last month or so, you've seen that. Heck, you might have even saw him early in the summer. You're like, geez, look at his arms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so two things stand out to me on that one. One, pass pro, which he's been so much better in his time in Nebraska. And that's something that they're really emphasizing when it does come to being able to pick up, being able to chip, being able to provide that added layer of protection to Dylan Raiola, but also being able to bounce off that initial contact and hopefully stretching into a 5 or 6 yard run. I know he's talked a lot about trying to have that breakaway speed and have that second level speed, but I just think of that muscle mass in two areas right there that I think that's really important.
Yeah, he's really exciting. I think the way that you hear coaches speak about him, I mean, that's, talk about Luke Lindemeyer feeling safe with him as the number one. I think you can feel safe with Emmett Johnson as the number one this year, obviously. And look, I've made the comment on this show before. I think he was the best running back Nebraska had for the last 2 years. Yeah. I truly think he was the best guy and maybe the most underutilized guy in that room over those last 2 years. And I'm really excited to see how he grows and develops coming up as we look ahead to 2025.
So it is that time as we're getting closer and closer to that first game. In fact, it's crazy to think, Grant, we've already got
less
to that
than a
point
week now.
Busted out, fall camp now in game prep mode. So now as the Husker Huddle continues, we're in game prep mode. So we have to bring on our next guest, Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7 Sports, because we're going to kick off game week. We're going to do so with one of the very best. And before we had him on, we were talking a little baseball too, because Bruntzy, of course, is on the baseball beat. He's got an awesome podcast during the Husker baseball season as well with all things Nebraska baseball. But this time, between he, Brian Christopherson, Mike Schaefer, always putting in all of the work when it comes to everything Husker football. So Bruntzy, here we are. I don't know about you. It feels like this one went by quicker. It just feels like this camp went by quicker. And maybe it's because other than right out of the gate, the Mac Markway news and Gage Stinger, and there's some other players that have been lost. Obviously, Bly Hill you'll feel bad for. But we haven't had some of those crushing just run of injuries. I don't know. It just feels like this thing has gone a lot quicker as we get closer to that kickoff against Cincinnati.
Yeah, you need to bang on that wall behind you. You say that.
Doing it.
No, it has gone quicker. I was walking to the car after practice on Monday, I guess, and had the band down there getting ready. Like it sneaks up on you. But no, it's been an efficient practice. It's been. Is it fair to say quiet, at least as far?
I think so.
Yes.
Like beyond injury stuff notwithstanding, it's felt quieter. There's still some position battles that have to shake out. I mean, what are we calling this week in between? Like it's like dead week almost.
Yeah.
We're all sitting around studying up, waiting for the big test. But I'll agree with you. It's been a lot quieter this fall camp and much quicker, which is okay. Like the off season is far too long. So I'm glad we'll have actual football here really quickly.
Michael, is there anything or anyone to this point that has been, I guess, basically lost in the sauce? I know we cover like pretty much every angle that there is to be covered in this 3-week span, but is there something that has slipped by, a position group, a particular player, or a cause for concern that people aren't really talking a lot about heading into Cincinnati week?
That's a good question. I think I was thinking about this when you kind of had the cattle call of defensive players rolling through this week. Willis McGahee just is like criminally under-discussed, I think, for what he can be and will be for this defense. Don't really hear much about him. Haven't heard much this camp. But he's a guy that, with Phil Simpson's up there talking, it's kind of like, this guy that had a pretty good freshman year last year isn't even really on the radar. I think he's a guy that gets overlooked. I mean, I've been kind of focused more on the special teams piece of it. I mean, I think we've heard a little bit about the kicking competition. That's still ongoing. They want to have somebody in place, at least to start, I guess, within a week of the opener. But that's maybe been kind of looked over a little bit still, and even though you've seen the importance of that portion of the game. So I still think there's a little bit of meat left on the bone that we can talk about for a few more days here before actual football. But I don't know. McGahee's always one that comes to my mind when I get asked about who are we not talking enough about, because I just think he's not flashy, but he's always around the ball. He's always making plays, and I think that kind of skill set is really going to be enhanced by the aggressiveness of what I think this defense is going to look like.
Bruntz, the other part that I've looked at, I think the tackle position competition, that's been talked about a lot. You bring up special teams there, and that, I think, I'm with you. I think that's very interesting too. I know wide receiver, we have a pretty good idea of the core guys that are going to be out there majority of the time, the pass catchers as well. But if we start to look at some of those, kind of similar to what Grant brought up with guys that are maybe under the radar when it comes to this overall group, that maybe they're not on the field every down, but guys that are going to rotate in at the wide receiving position, is there a guy or two that you think we're sleeping on from the same standpoint as what we're talking about on the defensive side?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like that first group with the wide receivers is pretty set. Two guys who I think are going to have something to say by the end of the year are coming off of redshirt years. Quinn Clark, I think you look at him and he just is a much different looking wide receiver than most others in that group. I don't know what they list him, but I mean, he's 6'6", looks a lot better than when he showed up. He's a really elite jumper from the high school ranks up in Montana. And Keelan Smith, I mean, he was somebody that was hurt last year. I think he was limited in the spring too, but that next kind of wave of guys in that group, I think, if you're talking, it's not a position battle, but I think there's a couple spots where you have to kind of suss out, what's the rotation going to look like? Who can you realistically count on to start the year? Clark, Smith, Cortez Mills, I think, is also in that group as a freshman. Is he going to be able to come in and help you right away? Even at running back, it's kind of the same deal where I think everybody kind of has an idea of what that group of potential contributors looks like, but what does the order look like behind Emmett Johnson, and how much are you going to be able to rely on those guys in the first couple games? So I think it's an important question you asked there, because it's not a position battle in the traditional sense, but right. You need to know who you can trust, and that's the tough part about playing a team like Cincinnati right out of the gates. There's not a lot of runway for some of those young guys to just kind of ease into the season. You got to be ready to go at 8 o'clock in Kansas City on Thursday.
Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7 with us here on the Husker Huddle. Michael, I think my sense of things as far as the scrimmages go is that the offense has had the upper hand, and everybody's pretty tight-lipped on that. There's not a lot of people that get let in, maybe compared to the Frost era. But I think that's the vibe that I'm getting. I'm curious, is it that similar for you, and is that expected, or is it alarming when it comes to thinking about the future for Nebraska's defense here in 2025?
Yeah, I think it's been fairly back and forth. I think that's a fair way to put it. I would have a lot more concerns if it was just one side of the ball that was just consistently dominating. I think that would be a big red flag for me. I do think what you've seen from the offense to this point is we've heard just a steady drumbeat of Dana Holgorsen saying, take the routine play, routine play, routine play. And eventually the dam breaks and you start getting those big plays that Nebraska's lacked for the last few years. I think you've seen offensive players kind of take that to heart. And, I think, it's tough too by the time you get to the dead week or whatever we're calling it, third week of fall camp. Everybody's familiar with everybody. You've been going against the same guys basically since the season ended in January. You're fairly familiar with scheme. You know what to expect. And I think the fact that the offense is still having success in those settings, I think bodes well for maybe that side of the ball taking a step forward this year. I just think with the guys that they have back, the big plays are going to be there. And I think, just kind of having that full off season with Dana Holgorsen to really kind of hammer home what he wants from those guys is going to be a huge help for the offense. So, I don't make too much. I don't have too much concern about the defensive side of the ball. I know there's the conversations about tackling maybe not being what it should have been in that first scrimmage. That to me is almost kind of a product too, I think, of just the way the rules are now, where you can't tackle to the ground very often, and you're not asked to do that a lot during fall camp. So, I think the key for the defense and kind of continuing the success they've had the last couple of years is just finding a way to stay aggressive. You got to get a lot of guys to the ball, and the tackling stuff will be there. But I do think when you have a team where it's a little bit more back and forth in scrimmage settings, I think that's okay. Like I think that's fine. And even Matt Rule the other day, or I think it was Matt Rule, kind of slipped in that they had a pick six or a turnover for a touchdown. So the defense is I think kind of getting theirs too whenever they've had their opportunities.
Yeah, something we were talking about earlier about when John Butler brought up the playing as aggressive as the officials will allow them. I think that this is a group that really is emphasizing that. And, Bruntz, I don't think there's any mystery of what people expect out of Dylan Raiola. I think everybody expects him to have that year two jump. The way he carries himself and in the limited opportunities that we've had a chance to watch him operate during fall camp, it's impressive. I mean, there's definitely a veteran presence for a guy who's a true sophomore. When you think of the realistic expectation for him in year two, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a realistic expectation, and I think a reason why he doesn't maybe get as much juice nationally right now is just looking at his numbers from last year. They're great. I mean, they're good numbers for a true freshman starting in the Big Ten and everything that was kind of thrown at him with multiple coordinators and everything else. But I think people immediately look at that touchdown and that interception number. And last year, very close together. And I think, what looks like progress for him this year is you get those numbers further apart. You throw more touchdowns. You throw fewer interceptions. You are a little bit more efficient on offense than what you were last year. And I think that he'll have an opportunity to do that. And, I think your point about how he's carrying himself, I mean, it's night and day from what he was last year. And I think when you're a freshman coming in as a quarterback, there's the expectation that you're the leader because that's what the quarterback does and that's what the position is, what you kind of ask from it. But at the same time, you're still 18, you're trying to lead guys that are 22, 23 years old. Sometimes that doesn't work well. And this is his team. I mean, there's no question about that going into this year, whose team it is, who's leading it, who's going to really kind of drive this thing. And, I mean, even we had some of our national 24/7 guys that were up for the 7-on-7 tournament in June, and they, without prompting, said to me, like you can tell, like he runs that place over there. Like it's like Dylan's facility almost. And I think even the comfort with the media, I mean, you see a lot more just, he is who he is. And last year, I think it very much felt like a 18-year-old kid kind of trying to find his footing a little bit in college football.
You do think it's maybe an asset for him that he isn't getting the national attention that DJ Lagway is at Florida or some of these other quarterbacks?
I think it helps. I mean, I think we've officially entered the point where Nebraska is very much officially a dark horse team in the playoff discussion, but it doesn't ever feel like it goes much deeper than that. I mean, it's like, oh, Dylan Raiola going into his sophomore year, need to make a leap. They'll go as far as he goes, but that's kind of where it ends. So, I mean, I think he, in some ways, is kind of flying under the radar as much as you can as a former 5-star quarterback. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think it kind of allowed him to just get to work. You can physically see the work that he put in with kind of how he reshaped his body and looks like a completely different player just standing in front of you. So, I think a little bit of, flying under the radar, lack of buzz. I think that's okay for a program that has obviously needed to find its footing. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, when you kind of get into that conversation nationally about which quarterbacks are, the top quarterbacks in the sophomore class and things like that. And I mean, he's pretty far down the list from where you would think that he probably should be based on his talent level.
And keeping with the Dylan Raiola theme here for a moment, if you just look at that entire offense where you have reinforcements up front, you've got guys, new pass catchers. You can even look at running back position where you switched a wide receiver over to running back with Mosey. If, in your opinion, just without seeing a game yet, who do you think might turn out to be the most valuable addition for this offense in helping Dylan get to that level?
Of the portal guys?
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably Dane Key, I think. I think what they lacked last year was that true wide receiver one. Nair had his moments early in the year. Jamal Banks, actually, if you go back and watch some of the games late in the year, I think they actually found a way to finally use him late in the season. But there was never, I don't think there was really ever a situation where Nebraska had like that dominant wide receiver one. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what they hope that they're getting in Dane Key. I mean, he was productive every season he was in the SEC. His production continued on an upward trajectory the longer he was in college football. And I think that's, the ability of a guy who's 6'3" to go up and make contested catches and get you those types of big plays. I think that's going to be helpful from what they had last year. I know this isn't really the question, but does Ja'Cory Barney's kind of ascent also make a big deal in helping there?
Yeah, and I asked the question, Bruntzy, because I don't think it's a wrong answer to even throw in a guy like either a Rocco Spindler or an Elijah Pritchett as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Spindler and having a little bit more veteran presence in the middle of the line, I think that'll help him a ton. But the wide receiver position, if they can kind of get things figured out there and get a little bit more production from that group, I think that'll be extremely helpful for Dylan, because I felt like, the wide receivers had their moments last year, but just not enough to where you could kind of make that next step. And I think this group is a little bit better poised to do that.
What do you make of Terry Braden on that defensive line and the guys that he's brought in? He spoke to the media on Tuesday, kind of high energy guy, but what do you think of him?
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of in the same boat as, what we were kind of saying about the wide receivers and the running backs. Like, you know who your four are going to be. You've got your big four at the defensive line. But can guys who are, the fifth guy in the rotation, can he come in and give you more snaps than what they did last year? Can they get something out of Williams Nwaneri, and can he be close to that 5-star guy that he was and didn't show at Missouri? That'll tell us, I think, a lot more about not only Terry Braden's work, but also just what this defense can be, because you got to be good up front. I think they feel okay about those frontline guys, but so many guys in that group have been kind of rotational players that play 20 snaps a game. And now you're being asked to play 40 or 50 snaps a game, and our guys up to that. That's the biggest question for me on defense. Like, I think overall they'll be fine, but that group has to be strong in numbers and not because you just don't have Ty Robinson, a Nash Hutmaker, and those you have to kind of recreate those guys with more with more linemen, I think.
You came up one. Yeah, you came up. I was gonna say you came up with one word short.
I wasn't gonna give you the pleasure of that, because you knew where I was going with that.
Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7 Sports, joining us, and I'm sure we'll be talking to Michael throughout the season as well. But always great work from he and the guys at Husker 24/7 Sports. And Bruntz, always appreciate you jumping on, talking some ball with us. We're almost there. Can't wait to get it started. And, I don't know how interested you are in Major League Baseball right now, but I think it's probably a good time for all of us to start some football, right?
Hey,
yeah, we need to make that pivot hard.
Royals are still a couple of games over right now. Come on now. Don't give up yet, Cleveland.
That's right. Be well, Bruntzy. We'll talk to you soon, my man.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Good stuff again from Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7 Sports. As we're going to be talking, I had a chance to actually catch up at the end of last week with Justin Evans. It's funny, we're talking to Michael Bruntz about some of the main contributors if Dylan has a step up. And I don't think he's wrong. And I think a lot of people would also point to the new receivers.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with not only what they brought in from the offensive line, but also reshuffling certain guys too. And this is really a position that Justin Evans came to Nebraska to play. He gets his opportunity.
Yep.
And you'll hear about how that transition and just how the offensive line is coming together. Some really good stuff from Justin Evans.
It's funny how those guys find a way, whether they mean to or not. They're a lot like their position coach. Rocco Spindler's a little bit different, and he's a new addition.
Right.
And we haven't talked to Elijah Pritchett yet, but I mean, they usually seem very matter of fact. They're going about their business. They avoid the spotlight. That's kind of the vibe.
Well, this is going to be an interesting time right now. So before we do get to that Justin Evans interview, this time next week. Oh no, I don't know what's going to happen.
This time next year, things are going to be really crazy.
But this time next week, we're going to be talking about a game. We're going to be getting ready for a game. I mean, it's really here.
Getting prepared for Akron.
Yes. As you're watching and listening to this right now.
We won't be. No,
because we'll have one out before.
See, now I'm all over I'm in the wrong time space.
Yes. As we mentioned at the beginning, we will have an early release date on next week's huddle because of the fact that it's a Thursday night game.
And it'll be Thursday morning, 10 a.m.
Yes, okay.
Thursday morning, 10 a.m. So while you're driving down to Kansas City, eat up an hour of your drive with us, hopefully.
Pre-game little primer right there. I know I'll be taking full advantage of a lot of pre-game priming before Cincinnati as well. But, so, I mean, we have to get to our season predictions
we have to do that at some point.
Yeah, so what better time than the present right now as Nebraska wrapping up fall camp. Now they're in game preparation mode, getting ready for Cincinnati. So the question is, if there is improvement this year, what does that improvement look like? What does Nebraska, what does Matt Rule in year 3 need to do to validate the previous stops he's had in college football of that year 3 success? And look, those stops, obviously you're talking about 2 different conferences. So the success obviously can be varying, but the bottom line is there needs to be success. And I've said this a lot, Grant, where I think your eyeballs, the record obviously is going to tell the biggest story, but I think your eyeballs are also going to have to be that when you watch this, systematically things look better. The operation from the sideline, all of those things.
What about clock management too?
Operation right there.
That's another that we talk about things with Michael that are flying under the radar. Like I think that's sort of been one of the eyesores of the Matt Rule era that hasn't really come. I mean, it's come under fire. It came under fire in Wisconsin with Chubba Purdy and everything that happened that year. But I mean, it hasn't come under fire maybe as much as if the stakes were higher, like they could be this year and maybe will be, and the expectations will be higher. So, I mean, that is a storyline, too, that is flown under the radar a little bit that we'll be probably quickly refamiliarize ourselves with.
Well, and that's what I mean by operation, too. Just everything systematically from the time the play is coming in to being processed, being distributed to everyone who needs to know how it's executed, and then going to the next play. And that's both offensively and defensively, and then special teams operations. How is that looking? Is everything looking crisp, consistent? And I'm not saying you look for that on Thursday because it's going to be the first game. I understand there's going to be some clunkiness to it. That just happens. There's going to be moments in the game where it probably looks a little bit like a slog.
Right.
But overall, in a 12, hopefully 13 game season.
Or more.
Ooh.
That's how I am.
It's a little tease right now. Collectively, did everything systematically look improved. And if it does, I think the record's going to also reflect that.
It should.
I think that's where your eyes are going to tell you this operation looks a lot more clean. It looks a lot more functional than we've seen in previous years.
I think I can think of maybe one team in the last 10 years of watching that you get to the end of the year and you think the operation, the improvement, the level of play that you saw on the field didn't match the record.
Yep. Yeah.
Literally just 21 Nebraska. I mean, everything else, it's by the end of the year, it's like, nope. I mean, the mistakes they made, that aligned, the roster, the talent of the roster they had aligned with the record they finished with. Yeah. So, here we go.
But that's where the operations hurt too, where certain things in key moments, whether it was turnovers, whether it was, again, sideline management, all of those little things that kept that team from being maybe a 3-win team to possibly a 7 or 8-win team.
Yep.
I mean, it really could have happened. So what I'll start.
Okay.
What I have this year for Nebraska in 2025, I have from the regular season a 2-game jump, a 2-game improvement. So I have what was a 6-win regular season team into an 8-win regular season team. So I have Nebraska going 8-4. So when I look at the games, there's a lot of obvious games that I think I'm in that mindset where I never say, oh, that's a win. That's a win. That's an easy win. That's a layup. Because I don't think Nebraska in the recent years has earned those give-me's. I hope they're getting closer and closer to that. Now, obviously, Houston Christian, if they were to be in a battle in the fourth quarter, that's a problem. That's a bit of a problem.
Agreed.
So that's as close to that's a sure win as you're going to see, but I always call those are the opportunities. Then there's the 50-50 games, which I think Nebraska has a lot of those this season. And then there's the games where you feel like, Penn State, that's going to be really, really tough, especially being in State College. Michigan coming to Lincoln, it's going to be tough. I think that's more than a 50-50 game, but I think that's a great opportunity for Nebraska if they really have climbed back into that relevancy that they're looking for. That's going to be the first, in my opinion, major test of that. And that's not to overlook Cincinnati. But my 4 losses, I'm going to start with that. My 4 losses, I have Michigan. I've got Minnesota. I don't like if that thing is a regular Saturday, that given Minnesota, Nebraska history, but also the quick turnaround, I'm not in love with that. And then also I've got, this might surprise some people, I've got UCLA and Penn State. Those are my 4 losses.
Okay.
So in my 50-50 games, I look at Nebraska being able to, if we want to call Cincinnati a 50-50 game. I know the odds makers won't say that. I think Nebraska wins that. I think they look good in a what is going to be a very Nebraska pro crowd. I think this team has been chomping at the bit to get out there, to play in this big-time environment. I think they will look the part. And I do think that Michigan game has a chance to be extremely close. I'm going to say at the very end, this is where Michigan ends up taking care of business. But I think Nebraska takes care of Michigan State. I think they take care of Northwestern. I think they take care of Maryland, okay? Then look at another big 50-50 game that hasn't gone Nebraska's way as of late. I think they do get Iowa. I think they beat Iowa in Lincoln. Those games have been so tight. I think this is going to be a much more prepared team as long as the health part of this is on the up and up. I think Nebraska is in a good position hosting that game to win that one. Now, some people might say, you got UCLA, not USC. I think USC is another moment for Nebraska to show their improvement as a team and as a culture under Matt Rule. I think that's going to be a big-time game. They're going to be wearing the All Blacks. I think this is going to be a game that was really close last year in Southern Cal, that I think being in Lincoln is going to be problematic for USC. And obviously everyone's hoping the weather will be more fall-like and not, the unseasonably warm November. But I think there's a lot of things that add up for Nebraska that I do like them in that game. I think there also is the season, as it prolongs, you're seeing improvement with Nebraska. Then you're like, well, then why do you have UCLA? I think people are sleeping on UCLA. I really do. I think if you looked at it right now, the USC game, by most people's opinion, is 55-45 in favor of USC. And I think the UCLA game is probably 55-45 or even 60-40 in favor of Nebraska. I still think they get bit in LA, but I think they take care of the LA team in Lincoln. So that's where I have Nebraska at 8-4.
So I got 9-3. The biggest difference for me, I think I agree with you 100% about Minnesota. Minnesota is the game that I think I hate the most on the schedule for Nebraska.
Other than Penn State?
I think even maybe...
Whoa.
I don't know if I want to say more than Penn State, but I think it's the game that people aren't maybe talking about as much as a game that this is the one where PJ Fleck has gotten the better of Nebraska consistently, for the last few years. And so it's a Friday night. Maybe it's you get lucky and it's fall break. I don't think it falls on Minnesota's fall break. So students will be juiced. That'll be a very, very intense game. And traditionally, those games have been 50-50 games.
Yeah.
It was
a 50-50 game. I agree.
I just don't like that game at all. And so we'll see how things play out. I mean, there's questions to some extent at quarterback, running back. It doesn't really seem to matter with Minnesota. Somehow the Golden Gophers find a way to win a scrappy 13-10 game against Nebraska, a la the last time the Huskers were there. So that's a big one that I have circled. I'm actually not that concerned about Michigan. I think the Michigan game is the game that Nebraska puts its stamp on the season as a potential true playoff contender. I think Nebraska wins that game at home. The crowd is excited. That's probably the game where I feel like they overperform what people are expecting. I'm not in love with the freshman quarterback without his head coach coming to Lincoln, even if they've already played at Oklahoma. It's not something that to me lines up for success. And Nebraska offensively should be ahead of where Michigan is. Dylan Raiola should be ahead of Bryce Underwood or whoever's playing.
It's going to be a great matchup, though. If Nebraska's offense is that much improved,
right? We
know the strength of Michigan, and that's their defense. So that could be where two worlds collide there for sure.
So that's the game I have them winning that's different than yours. So I'm at 9-3, and then I agree with you on UCLA. That's a team that, because of the funky "we're in LA" comments a year ago, USC is flashier. You've got the more well-known head coach. There's a lot of things that draw eyes for people onto USC and away from UCLA, but they've got really good pieces.
Yeah, they do.
And then Nico Iamaleava.
Good job.
That was close.
Everyone always just calls him Nico.
Anyway, you got him there. That's a really, really strong quarterback paired with some good skill pieces and a defense that was really, really solid last year. So that's another one in November that you think, man, you're going, even if you're talking about going multiple time zones over.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just a lot that's maybe working against Nebraska there, more so even than USC, which is my close runner-up number 2 for the most overperforming game. And then we both have losses at Penn State. There's not many people, unless they're true diehard Husker fans, that are picking Nebraska to win that game right now. And so we'll see how things develop, and I'm sure we can repick things halfway through the season and think about things. I think you're right I think they get Iowa too. They should have got Iowa last year.
Yep.
They dominated Iowa for other than 2 plays pretty much in that game. And so I think Nebraska, if they have actually made the improvements offensively that they believe they've made and acquired the positions that you need to set Dylan Raiola best up for success, they should win that game. And so I've got them winning Iowa, Michigan. I think Cincinnati's probably 60-40 Nebraska. Michigan State's probably 60-40. Northwestern's probably 75-25. And then USC is a 50-50 game. But I mean, especially if that ends up being a night game, that could be a very, very raucous environment. And so I'm not really as worried about USC as I am UCLA and Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that the USC game, I love where that is on the schedule. The Michigan game might prove to be in a good spot on the schedule for Nebraska, because you mentioned the freshman quarterback. He's obviously going to take his growing pains. I think it's a fair point about Sherrone Moore not being in the mix all the way through that game. So those are some factors that I think are interesting. The game that I do think that they overperform is USC, because I think USC is going to bring in a good team. I think they're going to be in solid footing when they come into Lincoln. That's where I think Nebraska overperforms the most. I think you and I are both in agreement of the UCLA game where I'm not convinced that UCLA is going to have this major jump, but I think they are going to be an extremely tough out for even some of the better teams on their schedule. And I think they're going to have some of those wins against teams that are not quite there yet. And I think Nebraska, unfortunately, might be one of them. So I think the under the radar game that I'm most nervous about is UCLA. The game that I think a lot of people, if they are throwing some losses at the board other than Penn State, I think some people have USC. That one, I'm with you. I think Nebraska really shows out for that one.
To me, it seems like people are in one of two camps. I mean, you're either in the camp that thinks that, look, I have to see it to believe it, and so they're going to go 7-5 or 6-6 until they don't do that.
Yeah,
because I'm sick and tired of predicting higher than that.
I understand. I understand.
And then there's the other camp that's basically the complete opposite that says, which is the camp that I'm in, they have to win 9 games. They have to win 8 or 9 games because if it doesn't happen this season, then you really start to doubt all the other pieces and the things that are around you. And so like that's where it's at. I think my mindset is with this is just they have to win 9 and show clear, evident progress that this offense is fun to watch. Yeah. This defense makes plays. Things that I don't know if Nebraska's had that combination on the field. Well, not obviously at the same time, but in the same game since Taylor Martinez and the Bo era, the end of the Bo era. Circa 2013, 2014.
Having a mirror and,
Yeah, like where you don't see a position group of players come out onto the field and your stomach tightens up,
Right.
Or like, okay, I'm excited to see what sort of play Quincy Enunwa makes.
Sure.
That I think is another way, and it's not like a quantitative data point that you can just clearly put a stamp on something, but like, that to me would be a sign of progress. You come out there, you see whether it's the offense or the defense out on the field, you know who the playmakers are, and you don't feel this lack of confidence that can sometimes creep in and certainly has crept in over the last 10 years.
You at 9-3 then would have, especially the way it shakes out, what I think would be a major checkpoint on Nebraska showing improvement and having that year 3 breakthrough that Matt Rule has had at Temple and Baylor.
Yeah.
Getting into November, one of the things I've said many, many times, if you can be in the top 25 in November, you technically have a shot to be in the college football playoff, depending on how you play out November. If Nebraska is going in November, controlling their own destiny of potentially being in the college football playoff, and I'm not even talking about winning a Big Ten title, but being part of that conversation, sign me up.
No,
give me that as a major stepping stone and improvement.
I think my prediction basically puts Nebraska in the South Carolina tier from last year.
And that's a great place to be.
I mean, I think that's
a great place to be.
And to me, if Nebraska has a season that is similar to South Carolina a year ago, I think the vibes are at an all-time high heading into the offseason. You think about Dylan Raiola, junior year, getting ready for the NFL draft. Okay, next year's our year. Next year's the year that Nebraska punches its ticket. That's sort of the kind of the season that I'm forecasting at this point in time, and we'll see what happens. Sure. Because look, plenty of people have predicted 9-3, 8-4, 7-5, 6-6, all those sorts of things over the last few years, and Nebraska's fallen short. And I totally understand the group of people that are in the camp of I'm going to predict 7-5 until I see something that makes me feel differently. But I'm on the optimistic side of things this year. And if it doesn't end up being that way, then there's a lot more questions and answers heading into January.
We both have the over, by the way, too. The win total for Nebraska, as you know, is 7.5. And I think we said that at the very first show we did was
got to be over.
You got to hit that over for this thing to feel like a solid success. And I'm going to say something for the people you said at that 6-6, 7-5 mark. I'm at 8, you're at 9. But I do think another part, like the November thing being part of maybe the college football playoff conversation because you're in the top 25. Other thing is trying to establish that floor, being able to set at the very least worst case scenario, injuries, all of that stuff, that you can still somehow scrape out 6 wins. It's never going to be worse than 6 wins.
Sure.
Being able to establish that floor is where I think they ultimately can reach that ceiling. So could they do that, I feel very confident, 100% confident that it is not any worse than 7. I'm going to say that.
That's a good place to be.
It's not any worse than 7.
We'll check back in December.
All right. I mentioned I had a chance to catch up with Justin Evans. Want to play that for you right now. Once again, it's Husker All Access brought to you by Access Bank, here for a reason. Talking to Nebraska center Justin Evans, and real no mystery on the depth chart. In fact, I believe Coach Rule said that, yeah, he's the guy at center right now. So that transition from guard to center, how's that gone so far?
I mean, it's been going great, with the guys in the room helping me, because a transition from guard to center is not easy, but I'm the guy for it. And the guys in the room like Rocco, Henry, Turner, Teddy, those older guys who've built me up when I was a young player, just helping me get accustomed to it, helping me out, whether it be helping me out with calls or anything. They're just giving me words of encouragement every single day. So that's been a big help as well.
We know a lot of what, even since you've been here too, a lot of the talk about seeing new faces around you, both, whether you're center guys that are going to be a guard next to you, or when you've been at guard, tackles next to you too. So, I mean, you've seen a different rotation. What do you like about this group so far as you guys are progressing towards that season opener?
Yeah, I mean, this group of offensive line is special, man. Like, the years since I've been here, this has been the closest group I ever had. Like, guys are coming to my house all the time. We're hanging out with each other. We're talking to each other off the field. It's just building that rapport between each other is important, for those tight-knit units, especially offensive line, because it's not like we're out there playing by ourselves. Yeah. We need all 5 guys doing their job, and I know that I can trust my left guard to do his job, and they can trust me to do my job. I can trust the tackle. So we've just been building this thing since Coach Donnie got here. It's been a process. We've just been building it every single year, and this year is just, man, we have no reason,
You mentioned Coach Raiola. What that relationship from the time you've been here to where you are now, and how he's helped in that process, what's that been like for you?
I mean, it's been nothing but amazing. Coach Donnie is one of the first coaches who actually told me that it starts with me. I have to believe in myself. I have to believe in everything. So he's been nothing but help since I've been here.
New faces like Elijah Pritchett, like Rocco Spindler, guys that come in from also power conferences, a lot of starts under their belt, and getting them acclimated with the group that you've been a part of for a while. How's that been for you guys?
I mean, it's been a great process, learning from Rocco. He came from a high caliber program. Elijah came from a high caliber program. We can learn things from those guys as well, and they can learn from us too. But just bringing them along, since they got here in the winter, we've been getting to know them better. Getting to know them off the field is most important, because once we're on the field, it'll translate, and you just show how close we are as a unit.
The guy behind you, Dylan Raiola, obviously going on an important year too. Yeah, you're laughing, but again, when you look at his development, I mean, he carries himself like a seasoned veteran, only going into his sophomore year. What do you take away from just that maturity, just from year 1 to year 2 for him?
I mean, Dylan is Dylan. Like he's going to do him automatically. Like just learning from him. Like he's so smart. Like he understands the game. Like he's probably one of the smartest people football-wise that I've been around. And even though I'm older than him, but I learned from him too. Yeah. Just the way he carries himself. Like his energy, we feed off of him. He's been nothing but great. That quarterback center exchange is most important. So like that's he'll do anything for us. I'll do anything for him.
You mentioned you have guys over a lot. You guys you've been bonding during the off season and now into camp. Some of the things that the offensive line likes to do to maybe get away from it all a little bit.
Well, eat is number one. You feel me? We guys.
Who's the best cook?
Me. Okay. That's no question. But just the guys, hanging out, eating, It could be we're at my house. Even if we just watch film at my house, we just order food or whatever. Like it's words can't even describe how close we've gotten. And we just got into playing cards now. We just hang out, whether it be spades, Uno. Just it might seem like little stuff, but it's really important because it's going to show on the field that hey, I'm going to do my job because I care about you.
Just 2 more questions here. I want to ask you, in the dorms, we haven't been able to get a lot of fun stories. And I know you guys didn't spend that much time in the dorms because you're up so early and then you're getting in the dorms late. But any memorable moments from the dorms, either this year or the last couple of years?
I mean, every moment is memorable in the dorms. Nobody wants to be there, but we just been making the most of it. Whether that be hanging out with each other after practice, just chopping it up about plays, or just about life stuff we're going through. Once we are vulnerable with each other. After those late night practices, we walk on the walkbacks to the dorms. We're talking to people like O-linemen are talking to DBs, DBs are talking to receivers. So it's just intertwining all positions, and it's just a good thing to have on the team where you can have like those skill positions hanging out with a kicker. Like it's been amazing.
All right, lastly, good on good battles. Who do you salivate over when he's across the line of scrimmage from you? Where are the best battles for Justin Evans right now so far in camp?
I mean, the best battles is every play that I get. You get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to call nobody out. Or like, it's just every battle is the best battle because that play I know I can get better regardless of who's in front of me.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
That's Justin Evans, center for Nebraska. It is Husker All Access, brought to you by Access Bank, here for a reason. Again, appreciate Justin Evans giving us some time there. And obviously, Grant, he's going to have kind of a big role this year too.
Yeah, he'll be pretty important. Yeah, it'll be good. I'm excited. Again, I'm being around a lot of football-sized people, but you can see, I mean, Nick's not a small guy. So like,
what are you trying to say?
Yeah. Anyway, his physical makeup was impressive, and he had a lot of good things to say too. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it is time, and we've enjoyed all of the questions you guys have thrown in. It is time for our mailbag. And again, if you want to get in next week, of course, game week, we'll get those answered before kickoff between Nebraska and Cincinnati. Just shoot us an email, Husker Huddle at myboomerradio.com. And apparently you can also hit us up on Twitter now. Or
people
X.
have been doing that. Thank
Yes.
you. Keep
Yes.
doing that.
Yeah. Hey, however you want to get your questions to us in the mailbag, we will do our best to get them right to you.
And get them in quick.
Yes, please do. Please do. Especially next week.
For next week,
I'm thinking we're cutting that baby off about Tuesday.
Probably Tuesday, late afternoon. So get them in as quick as you can. Again, the plan for next week, we'll have this episode out at 10 a.m. on Thursday. Not the Friday 10 a.m. That'll be the big difference, but you can take us with you. Take us with you down to Kansas City. Maybe you'll see us there.
That's just a splendid idea right there. TJ, who is just becoming a mailbag regular now.
Thank you, TJ.
It has a great question here, too. He says, if the team doesn't perform as people hope, so I'd say 6-6 or worse, who will be this year's scapegoat? Oh, gosh, we already got to think of scapegoats. First year, it was Jeff Sims. Second year, it was Marcus Satterfield. Which coach, player, position group might get labeled as the scapegoat? He continues to say, I'd lean John Butler since Tony White did such a great job in 2 years. The D-line is my second choice. The tight end room and running back room would be my dark horse candidates. What say you guys? Well, I would say, first of all, TJ, you took just about every one that I would throw in there. Now, I'm going to definitely throw in the offensive line because I think with the upgrade that we did see with the offensive line, I think it's been sold, and I believe it. I'm buying stock into this offensive line and getting the additions of Elijah Pritchett and obviously Rocco Spindler. We just talked to one of those guys in Justin Evans and him making that move from guard to center. I think there's reason to be excited about that. But, if Dylan's getting sacked at an alarming rate, if the running game is stalling out, it just seems like it's the easy thing to do to point at the offensive line, and especially with the investment that they've made in the offensive line. And if it doesn't hold up, I would think that would be a pretty strong candidate.
For me, I think it's Matt Rule, which is not really a quote-unquote scapegoat, but that's where the buck stops. And if Nebraska plays at a 6-6 or worse level this year without significant injuries, things that you can actually justify for them underperforming, that's where the buck stops. He's the scapegoat, and I think he would welcome that as well. But the blame goes to Matt Rule. I mean, if they don't perform at the level you would expect them to perform this year, there is really at this point, given the experience that you have at offensive coordinator, and look, I understand John Butler as a potential choice here, but this is a guy with NFL coaching experience who was obviously heavily involved last year. Mike Eckler is one of the best special teams coaches in the nation. So look, if this team does not perform where it needs to be this year, there really isn't anybody that you can easily point the finger at other than the head coach.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And again, for the record, TJ, I agree with you on just about everyone you named right there too. And we're throwing in our additional scapegoat nominations as well if it comes to that. And hopefully it won't come to that. And according to maybe what you're going to see from our records.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or what you've already seen.
Yeah, what you have seen already. On Twitter or X, I'm still going to call it Twitter. This one comes from D-Rock, Derek, but he does go by D-Rock. Says, you guys keep talking about a vastly improved offense this season. In 2024, Nebraska averaged around 360 yards a game on offense. Oof. Is it a reasonable expectation for NU to make a 100-yard improvement to 460 yards? If not, what's an acceptable number for improvement? D-Rock, this is a fantastic question, and I think this has a lot of different layers to it. So I'm going to give you some context here. So if Nebraska improved by 100 yards to 460, going off of last year, that would be good enough for a top 10 offense. Arkansas was at number 10 at 460 yards. So do I think that that's a reasonable expectation? No. But let's look at, I just want to throw out some numbers. The highest ranked offense last year with the most yards per game was Miami with 537. But we all liked what Penn State did, right?
No doubt.
Penn State was 431, which was right at top 25. They were just outside top 25, 26. I also liked Iowa State's offense. Iowa State was inside the top 40, 416 yards per game. And if you're wondering where Nebraska was, that was 94th, just inside the top 100, but it was a pretty bad.
It was not good. I mean, there's 120, no, is it over 120?
Yes.
Roughly 120 FBS teams.
So my answer to that would be, is it reasonable expectation? No. What's a acceptable number for improvement? I like where Iowa State was. I think if you can find yourself in that top 40, if you're right around 410 to 415 per game, there's improvement there. I would think points per game would be on the rise, obviously, but I think that balance that you want to get out of the running game, but also seeing the passing game start to elevate like we expect it to do, I think would get you comfortably in that 415 range, which, again, that's a top 40 offense according to last year's numbers.
100%. I go to points per play and yards per play. That's where my world's at, right? You think back to last year, Marcus Satterfield getting asked what's a good number for yards per play. He throws out, well, what ended up basically creating a firestorm. Nebraska last year, 4.9 yards per play. That was good for 66th in the country. Obviously, that number needs to go up. In 2021, which is probably regarded as Dana Holgerson's best year at Houston when they won 12 games, they averaged 5.8 yards per game that season. Oddly enough, the 2021 Nebraska Cornhuskers averaged more yards per play that year, 6.2 yards per play, which I thought was it's a throwaway note. Anyway, you want to be above probably 5.5 at minimum there. I understand it's going to be lower than a Big 12 team, probably in the Big 10, but you want to be higher than 4.9 and 66th in the country, which is where Nebraska finished last year. The other thing in points per play, Nebraska averaged 0.31 points per play in 2024. Obviously not a great mark there, but 2021 Dana Holgerson, go back to that, almost a half a point a play, 0.49 points per play for the 2021 Houston squad. So I think, do they move to those best case scenario Houston numbers next year? Probably not, or rather this year, probably not. But the closer that you get to closing that gap, the better. And if you can get 75% of the way there, I think you'll see a vastly, vastly improved team. We'll see. I mean, I've heard people in the media corps throw out a 10-point per game increase in offensive production.
What that looks like yards-wise?
Who knows? Maybe it's just finishing drives off.
Absolutely.
But I don't know if I'm there yet. I don't know how many more. I need to see more before I can be like, yep, 10 more points per game. I mean, that's a lot. That's a massive improvement. And I just don't have enough of a background to be like, to confidently step into that. But those are some of the things I'm thinking of.
Yeah, the offensive efficiency is first and foremost what needs to be improved. And that doesn't always have to be yards per game. But it's a great question by D-Rock there. Our last question we want to get to, and we had a couple, we'll try to get to those next week as well. This one was from Wyatt. And this is an interesting question, kind of outside of the actual future of this team, at least as it stands in 2025. Wyatt asked, should Nebraska schedule more 2-for-1 home series in the future like they did with Wyoming and Fresno States in the past? Who would you like to see them schedule? So another great question for me, Grant. I'm now looking at my candidates are now all part of the Power Four. A lot of them are in the Big 12 right now too. I would look at, let's say a Houston. I think a Houston would be kind of a fun 2-for-1. At one point, they were obviously an AAC team. You look at even a Boise State. I think it would be cool to see Huskers playing on the Smurf turf for 1 year and getting Boise State to come to Lincoln twice. But again, when you start to look at those candidates like you had with the Fresno States and the Wyomings, I wasn't a big fan of the Wyoming one. It's such a small venue.
Yeah, not worth.
So I'm not a huge fan of that. But if there were candidates, I would look at some of those new additions to the Big 12, especially some of those AAC transplants. And
UCF.
Yeah. Ooh. See,
but that's the thing. I think
it would never happen, but that would be one.
I think 2-for-1s are dead, almost. Essentially, like the model that you're going to see in scheduling going forward in this new era of college football is one Power 5 or Power 4 team. You're gonna have a group of 5 and an FCS, and you're gonna see those every year. And it's going to be very, very rare that Nebraska leaves Memorial Stadium in September. Right. I think that's the way things are trending. And so 2-for-1s like we saw with Wyoming and Fresno during the Bo Pelini era and then Mike Riley, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of that. As far as who I would like to see them schedule, you just have to go lean on those old, in my mind, like college football is at a point where so much of the tradition is dead and it's a very tradition heavy sport. I think you need to lean into some of, as much as you can, as much as some of these other teams will let you, given the way that you need to schedule now with the current alignment of the college football playoff.
I know where you're going.
You need to lean into the Big 12, Big 8 sort of games like you had with Colorado. You can travel
to those too.
You need to have those. You need to give those to your fans as much as you can. Nebraska will do a little bit of that with Oklahoma State. Arizona, not quite that way. But again, I don't think the 2-for-1 model will exist really much in the future.
I think you're right about the Big 12 nostalgia, and I'd add to this real quickly too. Get the recruiting territories. So like at Houston, if you want to recruit Texas, try to find those recruiting territories that are going to benefit you too ultimately. Good questions. Again, get your mailbag questions in next week by Tuesday. Husker Huddle at myboomerradio.com. All right, so that is going to do it for week number 4 of the Husker Huddle. Again, next week, game week, Nebraska, Cincinnati. We're excited about this. We'll be talking to you right before kickoff on Thursday out at Arrowhead Stadium. So cannot wait for this. We'll give you our score prediction and all that fun stuff next week. For Grant Hansen, I'm Nick Hanley. Until next week, it has been our pleasure.